how do you get things started? How do you move, and how do you grow? How do you start anything? You've heard it said that the first step is the hardest one to take. In this video, I'm going to show you why that's not true. See, here's the thing. Most of us are designing starting points that are way too big. We love to think big, and a lot of people are actually really good at thinking big. It's great. We love that. It's fun to get out over our horizons and out into the unknown in the future and think about ideas that would be fun to have, or things we'd like to do. And we call this dreaming, and I love it. It's great. And it is really important to think big. But for people who are good at thinking big, they're often not good at thinking small. And that's the key to getting anything started. Not thinking small, because some people are really good at thinking small. They can be very practical and concrete and grounded, and they're always got their feet on the ground, and it's awesome, except often those people aren't good at thinking big. And that's the key to getting started. That, you see, the key is to be able to think big and think small at the same time. And it turns out that can be hard. When people say your first step is the hardest one to take, I would say that's only true if the first step is way too big. The trick to getting anything started is to think small so that the first step is literally the easiest one to take. And then you take that step, and then you design another small step, and you take that step, and you design another small step, and you take that step, and you start to build momentum so that you can start taking bigger steps, and you start to move faster over time. But the key is to always have the next step be within what we call your activatable resources. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, because this is actually the process that we like to describe for getting anything started at Ikon Coaching. It's actually a 5-part process. Step 1 is literally dream big. You've got to think big. You got to connect yourself to things that you're dreaming about, that are out over the horizon, and here's why it matters. You've got to think in a way that is big enough to activate intrinsic motivation. You've got to think in a way that causes you to want to do the thing, because if you don't want to do it, you never will. Internal motivations are the things that make all the cost of doing an adventure or doing the project of starting worth it. The difference between punishment and sacrifice is motive, not the elimination of cost and hardship. It's just that sacrifice is cost and hardship that's worth it. And you get to that spot by thinking big about things you actually want. We like to call these big thoughts a what without a how. I know what I want to accomplish. I may not, and I probably don't know how to do it. And of course, that can be scary, but that's okay, because what it does is it gives me motive. It accesses something internally, and that's what makes the cost and hardship and worth it. And one of the costs and one of the hardships is figuring out how. So step 1 is think big. Step 2 is identify your activatable resources. Now, what are those? What do we mean by activatable resources? These are the resources that you can activate right now. You have them, you already have them, and you don't have to get more, and you don't have to get permission. If you identify your activatable resources, those are the things that you can deploy without anyone's permission. And that's a beautiful thing, because you could do that step today. There are 3 different kinds of activatable resources. Number 1 is money. We spend money. We have to activate money, and you have to figure out how much money you have. It's money you actually already have, cash in the bank. It's also things that you have that you could convert to money very quickly. Let's say you have a motorcycle you haven't ridden in 3 years. Let's say it's worth $5,000. You could sell that pretty quickly and get those resources. Those are part of your activatable cash reserves. And sometimes it's just part of the cost of going after something. But is it worth it? That's the think big question. So your activatable resources are the money you have, the things that you could flip to money really quick, or the credit lines you already have access to. Maybe that's what they're for. You don't have to go ask permission to get new loans. You have credit lines available to you, and you could use that money to do something and get something started. So activatable resources start with money. The other one is time. How much time do you actually have right now to spend on this project? And there's an amount. You need to figure that out because that's time you could spend right now on this project. Now, most people have a full life, but what you want to do is identify the places where there's time being spent on things that aren't creating value. It's not valuable expenditure of time. And it's like we sweep that together and you figure out, oh gosh, I've got 5 hours a week, 2 hours a day, something like that, that you could activate right now. That's part of your activatable resources. So figure out how you can get enough time and how much time you have. And then the third one is how much attention. See, there's 3 things we spend in life. We spend money, we spend time, and we pay attention. What are you paying attention to? And how much attention can you spend on this step you want to take? Attention is kind of like energy. How much energy do you have? And there are people who have plenty of time, but very little energy. They're stressed. They're pulled in too many directions. They're involved in complex dilemmas. And while they have a lot of time, they don't have any energy or they can't pay attention. And you can figure that out. So step 2 is figure out what are your activatable resources, your time, your money, and your attention. And you can't always get that precise, but that's okay. You know how much you have of those things, and you can be honest with yourself. So step 1, think big. Step 2, figure out what your activatable resources are. Step 3, design a step that you can take that fits within your activatable resources. That's the size of the first step. And when your first step fits into your activatable resources, you can take it right now. And it's not the hardest step in the world to take. It's just this little step. It's just, you're here, you go there. The problem is most first steps aren't very impressive. So we want to take big steps that matter. Well, if you don't have the activatable resources for that size of a step, you can't take it. And that's what makes it so hard to take. So take an unimpressive one. But what's impressive about change makers is when they can take small steps consistently over and over and over. And it's amazing how far they get in a short period of time. So design a step that fits inside your activatable resources. Step number 4, take that step and evaluate the results. That's where the learning comes from. You have to actually take the step, go do the thing, whatever it is, and you will have started. You will have started anything. Then evaluate the results you get. And then step number 5, repeat. Do it again. Once you get that engine working, where you're able to connect to your big dreams and access motive, understand your activatable resources, which are often bigger than you think. Design the step that fits within the activatable resources. Take that step, evaluate the results, and then do it again. Turn that engine on and you can start anything.